from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on AgDay, the U.S. imposes tariffs on some of its closest allies.
The time for talk is done. Donald Trump is a bully, and the only way to deal with a bully is to stand up and push back.
In agribusiness, building a marketing plan.
When we was putting hedges on early, I like total flexibility.
No-till planning into cover crops takes a little post-pass evaluation. We'll get a lesson on Farm Journal College TV. And June is National Dairy Month.
AgDay, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
It's totally unacceptable that a country is imposing unilateral measures when it comes to world trade.
An angry response from European leaders as the U.S. moves forward with previously announced tariffs on steel and aluminum against the EU, Canada, and Mexico. Meanwhile, U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross says the move should not spark worries of a trade war. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Wall Street trembling Thursday after the U.S. announced it would hit NAFTA partners in the EU with 25% duties on imported steel and 10% on aluminum. President Trump first announced the tariffs back in March, but granted Canada, Mexico, and the EU limited exemptions. But now those are in full force. The president calling the metal imports a national security risk. In response, the EU says it will impose retaliatory tariffs on $3 billion of American imports as soon as June 20th. European officials bracing for the tariffs have threatened to retaliate against U.S. orange juice, peanut butter, bourbon whiskey, and Harley-Davidson motorcycles, among other items. The EU says it will release its exact countermeasures in the coming weeks. Now, Mexico saying it would penalize U.S. imports, including pork, apples, grapes, cheeses, and flat steel. Canada has also named its proposed targets of U.S. goods, including a long list of food items. One thing is clear, they're not happy with the president.
I think that we've all had just about enough of Donald Trump. This is a president who rules by tweet. He's a man, he doesn't seem to get that his bluster and his bullying are costing people real jobs in his own country, in Canada, and in Ontario.
Wynne says she's calling on Canada's federal government to prepare the toughest set of retaliatory measures possible. Canadian Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland saying that Canada will slap dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S., imposing its own trade barriers on U.S. steel, aluminum, and other products.
The value of the goods is going to be $16.6 billion. The list is extensive. Chrystia Freeland, Foreign Affairs Minister, made it very, very clear this list was chosen very, very carefully to ensure a minimization of impact on the Canadian economy. All the goods can be either sourced domestically or from other countries outside of the United States.
Europe and Mexico pledged to retaliate quickly, exacerbating transatlantic and North American trade tensions. The European Commission president says the U.S. decision to impose those tariffs amounts to trade protectionism and that Europe would respond with countermeasures. Some U.S. ag groups are reacting to the news of these retaliatory tariffs on ag products. Betsy Gibbon has that angle of the story. Betsy.
Clinton, I talked with a number of ag organizations Thursday, and many of them say they're still trying to gather more information. Most saying all they know is that their product is on the list, but there are no specifics regarding duties, amounts, or a date of execution.
Last year we shipped $1.5 billion of pork to Mexico. We shipped close to $1 billion, $792 million to Canada. That's our fourth largest market. Mexico is our largest market. So we're very concerned about the trade dispute and that's in place and concerned about the impact it's going to have on U.S. pork.
The U.S. Grains Council stating it has spent years building markets in these countries. Quote, we had strong hopes this situation would be averted permanently, but it now appears we need to prepare for retaliation and its direct impact to U.S. farmers. Farmers for Free Trade saying, quote, the list of countries targeting or planning to target American ag exports now includes 28 EU members, our closest trading partners in Canada and Mexico, and the world's largest export markets in China and India. These are markets that the American heartland depends on for economic survival. Monroe says the announcement is adding to the uncertainty in place with the North American Free Trade Agreement negotiations between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico.
All right, thanks, Betsy. U.S. Commerce Department data showing Canada is the top source of U.S. imports of steel and aluminum, while Mexico is the U.S. fourth largest provider of steel and 10th largest of aluminum. One other pressing issue is NAFTA. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross saying the fact that the U.S. took tariff action does not mean that NAFTA negotiations can't continue. Canada's trade minister saying the two issues are on separate tracks, but that the tariffs would add further stress to the negotiations. While much of our attention focuses on disrupted trade, the U.S. Department of Ag releasing its expectations for agricultural exports for the coming year. The Economic Research Service of USDA is projecting agricultural exports to reach $142.5 billion in fiscal year 2018. That's a $3 billion boost from February estimates. That increase is based on expected increases in corn and cotton exports, weather problems in South America improving the export picture for U.S. corn, and ag imports. They're projected at $121.5 billion, also up $3 billion from February. That leaves a trade surplus of $21 billion. USDA also reporting Argentina is making significant import purchases of U.S. soybeans. So far, 600,000 tons of U.S. soybeans have been purchased, both in the current marketing year and new crop. Analysts say most of these purchases were made in April when U.S. soybeans were cheaper due to news about Chinese tariffs. Now, U.S. ag officials say that the soybean exports to Argentina could climb up to 1 million tons this year. A new Argentinian resolution would allow varieties that are yet to be approved to be used for raw materials in country, like animal feeds.
The last time we exported anything to Argentina was, 1998, 1997, when we, exported about 500,000 tons, 500,000. But since then, it's been, around 500 tons a year, and that's it. But as far as being built in now, I think definitely it's built in now. A lot of those sales are for new crops. So once we get into the new marketing year, we see the inspections that they actually go out the door. That's definitely could, affect the market even further.
Analysts say the country's recent drought and smaller crop is behind that sharp increase in buying. Cindy Clausen continuing to fill in for Mike Hoffman today. She joins us now with a look at crop comments from around the country. Cindy?
Good morning, Clinton. The drought monitor may show the southeast is nearly drought-free, but that may be an understatement. Michael Hancock sent us this picture of soggy fields in Doe Run, Georgia. He says this field was ready to be planted into cotton. He will have to rework this field due to excessive moisture. And Greg Black in Kingfisher, Oklahoma is recruiting a young scout, who is his oldest son, to check cotton fields with him. USDA says 45% of cotton acres have been planted in Oklahoma. That's 10 ticks higher than the 5-year average. Let's take a look at the wind forecast. As we head through your Friday, we're going to be seeing kind of stronger winds to start the day up in the plains, as we have a system there, and even into a lot as you start to get into the Intermountain West as well later in the day. Heading into Friday night, a lot of that's going to be in the nation's midsection where we see these stronger winds, and there's Saturday morning you see a lot of the central and northern plains seeing some stronger winds. That's a look at some things there. We'll have your full forecast coming up soon, but for now, here are your hometown temps.
Save time each day and receive the latest market prices directly to your cell phone with market updates. It makes it effortless to stay aware of shifting market prices. Just text Markets 8 to 31313 to get started.
All right, coming up, summer pricing strategies given the uncertainty in politics and weather. And later, running a no-till planter through cover crops can have its own set of challenges. We'll take a closer look today on Farm Journal College TV. An agribusiness market showing mixed reaction to Thursday's trade news. Let's get details now from the floor.
It has been a wild week so far. Nonetheless, for a shortened holiday week, we saw corn and soybeans and wheat all getting taken to the woodshed earlier, but finding a little bit of firmness here on the Thursday morning, mid-afternoon trade. Obviously, a lot is going to have to do with weather going forward as this crop starts to develop, so that's going to be something to keep a very close eye on. That'll kind of put the pressure on the funds and what they're going to do with their position, which they've likely been squaring up a little bit as we come to the end of the month. Now, as far as the soybeans are concerned, I'm a little less optimistic. We continue to get these trade headlines that put a little bit of fear in the market, and I think that puts a bearish undertone here. For cattle, limit up yesterday, but taking some heat today on the back of some trade fears. Lean hogs also very mixed here recently, taking some heat on the back of some tariffs potentially on the pork bellies out of Mexico. But again, I think this represents a buying opportunity. We saw the market sell off and accelerate lower, but kind of stalled out. And the fact that we weren't trading limit down on the back of that news, I think provides a little bit of opportunity going into the Friday sessions. This has been Oliver Soap with Blue Line Futures from the floor of the CME.
Bob Utterback Marketing, our guest here at the Agribusiness Desk today. Bob, as we look at 2018, obviously we've been trying to put a business plan in place, and we always have to make some tweaks and adjust. So I think it maybe help us a little bit to say, okay, what have I done so far? What do I need to do in the next couple of months?
I am a strong advocate when the guy can get a decent, and I think $4 corn for a lot of guys was the selling point for corn, $10 for beans. When we was putting hedges on early, I like total flexibility. So I bought in the money puts.
Okay.
And with the strategy, I was going to roll up, diamond strike. When I can do that for 4 cents, I'm going to roll up. But if the market crashes, I have a floor. Rather than a short futures or short cash sale, my preference is to be in a put. If I'm a cash seller, which I have a lot of clients are cash sellers, and they've still sold some new crop corn more than the trade. I think I'm probably more 50, 60% sold in corn, 50 or 60 to 70% sold in beans.
Okay.
And if I didn't buy calls, some clients bought calls last fall and they're in great shape. Okay, the guys that just sell the cash this spring, we will be wanting to get that call in place before Memorial Day weekend, a September call strike as a catastrophic plan for about 5 weeks to protect that cash sale against the 20-30% chance of a weather scare event. It's a insurance policy, but here again, it's more of a psychological policy, because if I take a hit on that cash sale, I can't sell that 450 corn, December corn, which I think is the brass ring I'm after, 450 plus corn. That's what I want to sell, because I've got profits. I work with clients that tell me that their cost of production is someplace between 340 to 350 to 320 cost production. So if I can sell December at 440 when it's inverted and roll capture carry, I'm close to $4.75 to $5 corn, and you're working on some very good returns.
Absolutely.
In a climate that is very uncertain, and I'd rather defend that guaranteed profit than try to say, for you to beat me, to beat $5 corn in summer of 2019, I would argue you would have to have carryover below $1.2 billion.
All right, so take the certainty when you can get it.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, thanks, Bob. We'll be back with more AgDay.
To talk with Bob one-on-one, call Utterback Marketing Services, toll free at 800-832-1488.
Welcome back to AgDay. Here with Cindy Clausen. Cindy, as we look at these fronts across the country, are they bringing cooler temperatures or still hot?
It depends on what part of the country you are. Unfortunately, we're still dealing with some really hot weather in the plains, but we have seen some relief in some of the north central areas. Let's take a look. And certainly the maps have been a little bit messy with all of these fronts that we've had moving around, especially the eastern part of the country over the past few days. And today is no exception, with a couple of frontal boundaries through parts of the Corn Belt and into the Ohio and Tennessee valleys. That's where the cooler, drier air is, and that's going to be affecting the Great Lakes. It's still really warm and muggy in the southeast and very hot in parts of the central and southern plains. We will see some showers and some thunderstorms as we head through our day, especially in the eastern half of the country and along this low pressure system in the central and northern plains. We start to pick up some more moisture there. And into the overnight hours, we'll see those showers and storms starting to move into the upper Midwest. For Saturday, we are looking at more showers and thunderstorms, especially in the southeast, and we'll see that system in the nation's midsection continuing to push east towards the Great Lakes while we dry out in the west. Here's a look at the precipitation estimate over the past 24 hours. It's really been along that stationary boundary in the sort of Tennessee and Ohio valleys, and then that second area with the front that's going to be moving into the plains. So as we add on the next 24 hours, both of those areas will be the focus for the rainfall across the country. Temperatures, again, as I mentioned, still really hot in especially the southern plains, where we could be dealing with triple digits in several areas. Cooler temperatures are bringing some relief to much of the Great Lakes, but it is still really, really hot in the nation's midsection. We're seeing some cooler temperatures in the northwest as well. Heading into the overnight hours, we don't see a whole lot of relief when your lows are only around 80 degrees. We've got 50s in the northwestern United States and into some of the northeast, 50s and 60s in the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. And then as we get into tomorrow, still hot, but we see a little bit of relief from some of the clouds and some of the rain in northern parts of the plains. Still real hot, though, in the southern plains. And then as we get into our jet stream, we've got that trough out west. We're going to see that kind of translating to the east, so we might get a little relief from the heat along the northern tier of states, but that trough will dig in, bring some stormy conditions. But look at that. Big ridge develops as we get into the middle and latter part of next week, and that means some very hot weather. That's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check out the weather where you live. Golden Hills, California, sunny and warmer for you today with a high of 71 degrees. Williston, North Dakota, a chance for showers and thunderstorms with a high of 77. And Warrenton, Virginia, showers and thunderstorms likely for you with a high of 87.
We'll talk no-till planting into cover crops coming up on Farm Journal College TV, and later, a dip, a dab, or dollop of ice cream for National Dairy Month. While your most recent planter setup is still fresh in your mind, field agronomist Missy Bauer talks about no-till planting into cover crops and the challenges associated with that process. It's today's lesson from Farm Journal College TV.
What we're trying to evaluate is the plantability into the cover crops themselves. So this particular plot I'm in here is where we no-tilled. One of the issues that I see in this with the stand in here that I have some concerns about is the variability in the stand. And what we're seeing is when we got into the heaviest part of where these cover crops were, you see we've got some small corn compared to the bigger corn that's out here. When we see these small plants like this is going to end up hurting our overall ear count, so our ear count's not going to be as good in the situation where we see these. Some of the reason for that, I believe, is as we're coming through with the thick mat of where the cover crops were, is that we lost the ability to keep our planting depth or hold the planting depth. So the planter actually rode out of the ground a little bit and caused shallow corn. So a lot of these small plants are shallow planted. Now some of the things I do see as some benefits out here from the cover crop, I've dug up some of the soil here where we had a lot of the thick, heavy residue cover, and we can actually see a lot of roots in here and really nice soil structure. A lot of good aggregates here, and the soil really crumbles up quite nice. So we see where there's some benefits of what we did out there, but we have to make sure we can plant into it as well. So if this ends up hurting our ear count, we gotta say, what are some things I can do on my planter to try to avoid this situation right here? And one of the things, if we're gonna no-till into it, is gonna be set our row cleaners very aggressive and add a little bit more down pressure probably on the planter as well. So those would be two things that as I come through the heavy mats of where the cover crop was, would try to, one, move it out of the way with the row cleaners, and two, have more force on my row unit to try to keep it in the ground. This particular treatment of tillage is where we ran the disc. So you can see when we planted into this, we ended up with a really good stand. So we didn't have the same issue that we had trying to no-till into the cover crops over there.
When we come back, a tasty tradition for the start of Dairy Month. This week's Farm Sense after the break.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit KubotaUSA.com today.
We had a tradition in my house growing up just about every evening around the time the local news came on. Bowls and spoons came out for a near nightly dab of ice cream. It didn't really matter the flavor, the brand, or the toppings. A small bowl of ice cream was, and still is, often the preferred nightcap on the day. Well, I'm not sure where or how it started. It may have been when my grandparents owned an ice cream store for a few years in Wisconsin, or the fact the Schwann's truck basically delivered it straight to our freezer. Thankfully, I married a woman helping me carry this tradition forward. Now, as we celebrate Dairy Month this June, you might be surprised just how big this business is. According to the International Dairy Foods Association, roughly 1.5 billion gallons of ice cream and related frozen desserts are produced in the U.S. each year. And on average, Americans consume more than 23 pounds of ice cream each per year. Now, that ice cream industry contributes about $39 billion to the national economy, creating about 200,000 jobs. So whether it's ice cream, cheese, or some other dairy-derived delicacy this June, know that the dairy industry is churning out plenty of product. The way I look at it, I'm just doing my part to help the nation's economy, one bowl and one generation at a time. Hey, if you like Farm Sense, don't miss the new Farm Sense podcast, now available on the new AgriTalk app. You can download that app for your phone or tablet on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Farm Sense, available on the AgriTalk app right now. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Spend part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.